Hey everybody, hope you are doing well. So in this video, I want to show 6 album covers that remind me of another album cover. And I don't know a great way to put this, but basically 2 album covers that look pretty similar. You've got the original album cover and then another album cover that was either inspired by, maybe unconsciously copying, not an out and out parody. I mean, there are album covers that are parodying another album cover. That's not what I'm going for here because those are a little too obvious. I think these, in some cases, are a little subtle, but I think there's not any mistaking that the one is definitely either inspired by or subconsciously borrowing very heavily from the artwork of the original album. So just to give you an idea what I'm talking about, the first album cover that I am going to show is the very famous With the Beatles album cover. Of course, Beatles have some of the most iconic album covers of all time. And OU 812, I think Van Halen, and I think they have admitted, if I'm not mistaken, that they definitely were inspired by With the Beatles. But I think it's pretty clear that there was definitely some inspiration flowing when Van Halen was picking that as an album cover. Another Beatles one that I want to show is Rubber Soul, one of my favorite Beatle album covers and one of my favorite Beatle albums. And more of the Monkees, where the Monkees are kind of positioned in sort of that same semicircle that the Beatles are on Rubber Soul. This, of course, is more of a close-up, but still you got the Monkees against the backdrop of the trees, and they're kind of in that formation where, you know, if you had done this in a fisheye lens or whatever, it would have looked pretty similar to Rubber Soul, I think. Next one I'm going to show, I'm going with Elvis Presley, his debut album, and The Clash, London Calling. Now, I don't consider this necessarily a parody of the Elvis album cover. I think they thought the lettering on this was very cool against the black and white. So I think that's probably why they chose that. I don't think they were deliberately parodying Elvis, but what do I know? But that's always, that comparison has been made. Next one I am going to show, this is The Who, their debut album, My Generation. It's got the little deluxe edition here, which is kind of covering the rest of the album cover. And then you have The Pretenders, Learning to Crawl, where you've got the camera looking down on the band. So I've always thought that was, you know, maybe a subtle reproduction there, or maybe not so subtle. Maybe they knew what they were doing. Next album cover I'm going to show is the debut album from the Byrds, Mr. Tambourine Man, where you've got that fisheye lens there covering the very groovy looking members of the Byrds. And just 2 years later, you've got Jimi Hendrix, Are You Experienced, both with that fisheye lens there. Lettering is different, but nonetheless, just the whole, I don't know, the whole feel of it, one reminds me very much of the other. And then the last one I'm going to show is, this is Boston, their debut album from 1976. And then a year later, you had ELO with their own little spaceship. I know it's not a guitar-shaped spaceship, but nonetheless, it just reminds me a lot of that first Boston album. And ELO fans may say, well, they used this design for A New World Record, the album that came before this, but it doesn't look like a spaceship on A New World Record. It just kind of looks like a jukebox or something like that. But they definitely went with the spaceship idea for this cover. And I wonder if it wasn't inspired because you had the Boston using the same thing. But both very cool album covers, very spacey, but nonetheless. So maybe this could be a thread if anybody else wants to jump in. If you've got some albums, one album reminds you of the other without it being a deliberate parody, could be inspired by, whether consciously or subconsciously. But hey, I leave it to you. Hope you're doing great. Take care.